Hi, class. Today we're looking at Chapter 1, the Olmec. Now, before we talk about the Olmec people, we're going to be looking at archaeologists and who they are and what they do. So let's take a look at that first. Archaeologists are people who study the tools and other artifacts of people who lived long ago. Using such evidence, they reach conclusions about how ancient people lived. Archaeologists have different views about exactly when early humans first reached North America. They have evidence that these people had migrated all the way to the southern tip of South America by about 10,500 BC. The people's migrations must have taken place over a long time, so their arrival likely occurred centuries earlier. Archaeologists also have different views about which route or routes these early American Indian groups might have used in their migrations throughout North and South America. Some scientists think they used an ice-free inland route. Others think early humans traveled by boat along the Pacific coast. Did you know? Beginning in the 1930s, archaeologists started to find evidence that early American Indians may have hunted large Ice Age animals. Mixed in with the bones of extinct animals such as mammoths, scientists found slim, beautifully crafted stone spear points. The first site where these spear points were found was near present-day Clovis, New Mexico, so the early humans who made them became known as the Clovis people. Clovis sites date back to about 9000 BC. And here we have a photograph of an archaeologist, and the caption reads, "Archaeologists use special tools when uncovering artifacts." There are a couple of things I want us to look at on this page here. The first is, how do we know that people first reached the tip of South America by about 10,500 BC? Well, again, the text mentions that they found artifacts and other evidence. So archaeologists go out, they discover things, they dig, and they find ancient tools and things that are left behind by these people groups. And then they're able to date those tools and other things and figure out when they were first there. Now let's take a look at the Olmec. About 11,500 years ago, the last ice age ended. The climate of the Western Hemisphere slowly grew warmer and drier. Many of the ice age animals that the early American Indians had hunted became extinct. That means they died off, they weren't around anymore. These hunter-gatherer cultures had to adapt to survive. Instead of gathering wild plants, they began to grow their own food. By about 4000 BC, farmers in Mexico and Central America were raising crops like maize, also called corn, beans, and squash. Interesting. So they weren't just going around picking up plants as they grew natively or naturally in the wild. They were actually planting them themselves and growing them to eat. Let's continue on. One of the most important effects of farming is that a community can raise more food than it needs to feed itself. This food surplus allows some people in the community to focus on the arts and religion that help to create a civilization. The first civilization to develop in the Western Hemisphere was started by the Olmec people. It developed in the hot rainforest of southern Mexico about 1200 BC. The Olmec built temples, carved huge stone statues, played ball games, and created a calendar and a writing system. They spread their culture across Mexico and Central America through an effective trade network. So, what that all means is that civilizations are only civilizations because we have things like art, religion, culture, things that you can do outside of just trying to survive. So farmers would grow more food than the community needed, and the community could store that food so people would have extra time to develop art, to develop different things in a culture, to explore religion, and create things that would make a civilization. They weren't just going around hunting animals and picking plants as they grew. They could relax and do things that they wanted to do instead of things that they just had to do. Let's take a look at a map here that shows the Olmec and the Maya. So the caption underneath here says map skills. Why might the two areas shown on the map inhabited by early peoples have included many coastal areas. And here we have the Olmec lands, which is in yellow right here, if we look in the legend, and the Mayan lands right here in the green. One thing I was thinking about with that question is why might early inhabitants stick to coastal areas, so areas around the water, is food. If you have the ocean nearby, you're always going to have a food source. You can go out and you can fish. Another reason is, as mentioned previously, some scientists believe that the early peoples traveled by boat in the ocean down the coast to settle new areas. So that could be as well. All right, guys, go ahead and go back and reread any areas that you weren't sure about on this, or rewatch the video if you need to, and we'll see you soon.